The question is it true? Is a calorie a calorie? There are many reasons to think that that's not the case.
In our dialogue, it has no place in medicine. Calories suck, but calories are not the issue. Okay? The whole issue of calories has to go down the tubes. And I am here to #kill the calorie as a unit of measure.
What if everything we thought we knew about calories was wrong? Imagine if the entire calories in, calories out model, the bedrock of modern diet advice, was a mirage that's been quietly undermining our health for decades. According to Dr. Robert Lustig, a well-respected pediatric endocrinologist, this isn't just a theory, it's reality.
Calories is the amount of heat required to raise 1 gram of water 1 degree centigrade.
Okay.
So it's a measure of heat.
Yeah.
Is what it is. That's what calories are.
He claims that the food industry, health guidelines, and even diet culture are all built on a myth that a calorie is a calorie, no matter where it comes from. But what if some calories are far more damaging than others?
If you take a mole of glucose and you throw it into a bomb calorimeter, you will get 4 calories per gram. That's true. If you take fructose and you throw it in a bomb calorimeter, you will get 4 calories per gram. That's true. We are not bomb calorimeters.
For years, we've been told to count calories, to watch our intake, and to trust that if we burn more than we consume, we'll stay fit and healthy. Dr. Lustig, however, says it's not that simple. In fact, he argues that focusing on calorie counts not only oversimplifies, but actively misleads us, setting us up for health issues ranging from obesity to diabetes and even metabolic syndrome. And, he claims, there's one particular ingredient that makes all the difference in the world. Any guesses? We'll reveal it shortly. Remember, this is the most crucial factor when it comes to the topic of calories.
You tell me, virtually everybody who counts calories loses a little bit of weight and then they plateau and then they get, tired of their diet and the weight comes rushing back.
Dr. Lustig points to the food industry itself as a powerful player in spreading misinformation. So, if calories in, calories out isn't the answer, what is? And why has this myth persisted for so long? Let's dive into Dr. Lustig's arguments, explore the science behind his claims, and see if he's right about the lies we've been fed. Part 1. The historical context of caloric theory. When did we first start counting calories? And how did calories even become a thing?
So this lends itself to this notion that a calorie is a calorie, that it's all about the calories. You eat too much, you exercise too little. Therefore, it's about 2 behaviors, gluttony and sloth. Therefore, if you're fat, it's your fault. Therefore, it's not the company's fault, it's yours. That's where this comes from.
It turns out the story of the calorie began far from the world of food and nutrition. Originally, calories were a tool for engineers, helping them measure the energy in fuels. Think coal, not cupcakes. It was only later that calories were applied to food science, and by the early 20th century, they'd become the go-to measure for managing weight. But here's the twist. The calorie as king concept didn't catch on because it was perfectly suited for our bodies. It caught on because it was simple. It fit nicely into dietary guidelines, public health campaigns, and eventually the booming diet industry. However, as Dr. Robert Lustig points out, the simplicity may have been its downfall. Calories measure energy, sure, but they don't account for how that energy actually interacts with our biology, particularly with our hormones and metabolism. By the time the 1970s rolled around, the calorie had become a household term. Yet obesity rates were rising, and people were wondering why. Could it be that the calorie counting wasn't the magical solution it seemed to be? And if not, then what was missing from the picture?
Number 1, obesity and diabetes are not the same. Turns out there are countries that are obese without being diabetic, such as Iceland, Mongolia, Micronesia. And there are countries that are diabetic without being obese, such as India, Pakistan, and China. In America, we are the most obese nation. We only have a 9.3% diabetes prevalence. If obesity is the problem, if calories are the problem, then how do you explain that they have a higher diabetes prevalence than we do?
Part 2. The myth of calories in, calories out. Let's get into the heart of Dr. Lustig's argument. Not all calories are created equal. What if a calorie from sugar affects us completely different than a calorie from fat or protein?
It's not the only problem, but I think it is the biggest one. Now, why do I say that? From a systemic health issue, the biggest problem was trans fats. The FDA finally banned trans fats in our food. Without question, trans fats are the devil incarnate. Seriously, consumable poison.
Dr. Lustig doesn't just speculate. He goes deep into biochemistry to show how our bodies actually process different types of calories. When we eat protein, for example, it's used to build muscle and other tissues. Fat is used as a longer-term energy source. But sugar? That's a different story.
Sugar is like alcohol. So, is alcohol poison? Depends on the dose. Right? The dose determines the poison. Paracelsus, 1537. We have an innate capacity to metabolize alcohol, and if we stay below that, it doesn't do too much damage. If we go above it, different story. Same thing with sugar. Same thing with this molecule, the sweet molecule, fructose. And the reason is because fructose and alcohol are metabolized virtually identically.
Dr. Lustig zeroes in on a specific type of sugar, fructose, and the damage it can cause. When consumed in large quantities, fructose is metabolized in the liver, where it is turned into fat rather than energy. In other words, eating a high fructose diet could be setting us up for weight gain, fatty liver disease, and even insulin resistance. And here's the kicker. Dr. Lustig compares sugar to alcohol. Just like alcohol, fructose puts a heavy strain on the liver, leading to fat buildup and other metabolic issues. But while we know alcohol isn't great in excess, many of us think nothing of drowning sugary drinks or processed foods filled with hidden sugars. Could we really be unknowingly damaging our bodies with our sweet tooth? Part 3. Metabolism and the hormone factor in calories.
Why it's not about calories? Because a calorie is not a calorie. Because it's about insulin and insulin resistance. Insulin resistance being the phenomenon where your insulin doesn't work well, so your pancreas has to make more. And insulin drives all of those chronic metabolic diseases. The reason sugar is so pernicious and such a problem is not because the whole body metabolizes sugar, it's because the liver metabolizes sugar. And all of the sugar that you consume goes to the liver. And the liver has no choice but to turn that excess into liver fat. And it is that liver fat that causes the liver to not work well, to become insulin resistant.
Dr. Lustig explains that hormones, not calories, are the real regulators of weight and metabolism. 3 hormones, insulin, leptin, ghrelin, play a starring role in this metabolic story, and they respond differently depending on what types of calories we consume. When you eat carbs, your insulin spikes to manage the rise in blood sugar, but over time, high sugar diets lead to insulin resistance, where cells stop responding to insulin as they should. Sugar, specifically fructose, is one of the main culprits here. When we consume too much of it, the liver turns it into fat, leading to a cycle of insulin spikes and crashes that can leave us feeling hungry and lethargic. Let's briefly talk about leptin.
So leptin is made in your fat cells.
Yeah.
In response to driving energy into fat, the cell will make leptin. The leptin will circulate in the bloodstream, will go to your brain, go to your hypothalamus, and say, hey, I've got enough energy on board to engage in expensive metabolic processes.
So we don't need any more?
I don't need to eat more. I can engage in puberty. I can engage in pregnancy.
Okay.
Okay, both of which are high metabolic processes. Okay, so it is like the servo mechanism, like the thermostat on your house. Okay, you have a floor but no ceiling.
Leptin tells your brain when you've eaten enough, while ghrelin hormone signals hunger. Processed foods, high in sugar and low in nutrients, can disrupt these signals, making it harder to feel satisfied and easier to keep eating. This hormonal disruption shows that the real issue isn't just about the calorie counting, it's about how certain foods interfere with our body's natural hunger and satiety levels, leading to overeating regardless of caloric intake. And this, Dr. Robert Lustig argues, is exactly where the food industry's calorie obsession misses the mark. So if calories aren't the answer, what is? Part 4, the food industry and the calorie illusion.
73% of all of the items in the American grocery store and in the British grocery store are spiked with added sugar by the food industry for its purposes, not for yours. Because they know when they add it, you buy more.
Dr. Lustig believes that our focus on calorie counting has played right into the hands of the food industry. By promoting calorie reduction as the answer to weight loss, food companies can market products as low calorie or low fat, giving them a health halo, even when they're loaded with sugar or artificial ingredients. Take low-fat yogurt, for example. In many cases, when fat is removed from a product, sugar is added to maintain flavor. So, while these foods might have fewer calories, they can lead to more weight gain and health issues in the long run because of their metabolic effects.
The point is that the food industry is very powerful, and they have, swept virtually every aspect of this under the rug for 40 to 50 years. They knew back in the 1960s that sugar was a problem, but they paid off scientists to say it wasn't.
Dr. Lustig argues that by keeping us focused on calories, the food industry has been able to continue pushing processed, sugary products with minimal accountability. And it's not just food companies. Lustig suggests that public health guidelines and labeling laws have failed to keep up, allowing this cycle to continue. But here's the real question. If calories aren't the culprit, can we trust any of the labels we see in the supermarket? And if not, what are we supposed to look for?
You gotta get the insulin down. Okay, how do you get insulin down? Best way, don't let it go up. What makes it go up? Refined carbohydrate and sugar, all the stuff you have over there in that corner. The food industry says glucose is 4 calories per gram. The food industry says fructose is 4 calories per gram. Therefore, they're equal because they're 4 calories per gram. And if calories were the issue, then they would be right. But calories are not the issue. Okay? The whole issue of calories has to go down the tubes. Okay? As far as I'm concerned, that's the problem. And I am here to #kill the calorie as a unit of measure. It has no place in our in our dialogue. It has no place in medicine. Calories suck.
Of course, not everyone agrees with Lustig. While his arguments have attracted a lot of support, they've also sparked intense debate. Some nutritionists and scientists argue that calories still play a central role in weight management, and that despite the nuances, a calorie deficit remains necessary for weight loss. So who's right? Lustig's critics say he oversimplifies the science by blaming sugar alone. They point out that many people have successfully lost weight by counting calories and focusing on portion control. But Lustig counters that while calorie deficits may work in the short term, they're ultimately unsustainable because they don't address the underlying hormonal imbalances. He believes that without changing the types of calories we consume, specifically by reducing sugar, we're setting ourselves up for long-term failure. So, if Lustig's theories are true, it could mean a radical change in how we think about food. No more obsessing over calorie counts or trusting low-fat labels. Instead, we'd be looking at ingredients, focusing on whole foods and taking a hard line on sugar. As we move forward, we might start questioning more than just our calorie counts. We might begin to see food and health itself in a whole new light. The real question here is, are we ready for it? Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. And make sure to hit that like and subscribe button for more insightful content like this. Remember, you are what you eat, so nurture your health. And remember to take your daily dose of longevity seed for a vibrant life.